Sorry for the delay, folks. It was fun. It seems that the EOC's emergency, well, their system is down. And the first time we came here that happened, I think you all know Bob Gelfand. Bob's question was to somebody, okay, you've just had a city emergency, you have 130 vehicles descending on the center. Where do they park?
In the street.
So they're-
Traffic.
yeah, I know. So,
As long as you're the first, 50.
yeah, I now have the phone number for the guy who actually opened that thing, so I can find them now. All right. Now, by the way, this is a perfect example of why these guys are here today, because everybody says, gee, it's old-fashioned ham radio and such as that, but we noticed a system failure here today. Okay, and that's what happens, and the ham community can come out without needing infrastructure, can set up. Okay, there we go. We're going to be exploring emergency communications. Do I need this thing?
No.
Well, I can talk directly into it. Is that better?
It's good.
You're a ham, come on.
Okay.
Is there an EQ on that thing? We should fix it.
I can turn up. Yeah.
They
Hang on.
played with it, they weren't able to make any changes.
Well, if,
It's too
Okay.
basic.
There is one.
Yeah,
No, it
yeah.
doesn't. It doesn't have it. There is one thing I forgot to do. It's to turn on the
turn
recorder.
down below 300 and above 3,000.
So what we're doing is the last number of, no, I'm not going, no, we don't have it. Yeah, you can change that a little bit. They told us we have our own sound system, therefore we didn't need to use theirs. I still want to plug into theirs. It's easy to be schlepping all this stuff down here. I only have to carry one box if they let me use it, so there we go, we'll find out. What we've been doing is, right now, is doing some education. We had the guys from Street Services and from the EMD and everything else talking. And we're going to have some more education this morning on what the three emergency radio services that work here in LA County are, and how they work and what they do. And we're going to have one of our own people from the neighborhood council talk to us about how he has worked to integrate smaller community areas into what we call ACS. And I told you that when you got here, you could find out what all these acronyms mean. That was the incentive for getting you here. And I hope that this morning is the start of action things. In other words, I'd like to see out of this, neighborhood councils, all of you start to talk to your neighborhood councils about organizing into your smaller units and looking at how do we communicate back and forth. Everybody understands that, and I use Lucy Jones earthquake as the prime example, because our El Nino can cause some flooding, cause a lot of problems, cause slides, and cause deaths. But when we get a major like Lucy Jones earthquake, our communications are going to go away. Your cell phones aren't going to work unless you have battery backup on them. Your internet, your local internet, your personal at your house is going to go away. Starbucks is going to be overwhelmed by people out there trying to get online. And you're going to have some way to talk to somebody about what's going on in your neighborhood. One of the problems, there we go. One of the problems that can arise, and that's going to be talked about today, is if everybody has a little radio and they don't know anything about them and they haven't had any kind of training or anything else, and they turn them on and they start talking, these guys can't do anything. It becomes a problem. And so we're going to talk about that and how perhaps we can put together a program for neighborhood councils and say, okay, here's what you've got to do, here's the kind of training you've got to go through. It doesn't have to be maybe as formal as what goes on with these services, but it has to be something that teaches you that the first thing you do, as somebody here said to me, you turn on your radio and you listen. And the question is, what do you do next? And that's exactly what you do next. You listen, okay? To hear what's going on, to hear who's there and everything else. All right. And he's smiling. I steal other people's material.
I was going to use that.
I'm sorry.
That was half my talk.
Okay, we'll reinforce it.
Okay. If there's time at the end of this with our late start. Perhaps today we can start talking about how we can look at some type of organization within neighborhood councils to help integrate them with these various services. And please, if any of you say, hey, this sounds pretty good, I could do this, talk to any one of these people who are going to be speaking here today and say, hi, can I get more information about your emergency service, okay? And you know, I encourage you to do that if that's where you are, okay? And by the way, you'll hear how this integrates. If you recall, Captain Wynn was here and talked to us about CERT. You'll hear how CERT is integrated into one of these services. Okay, so we'll flip a coin and say, who are we going to start with? And I did flip a coin, so I'm going to start with Marty. And because he is two things, one as an official with ARRL high up, and number two, he's with ACS, and he'll tell you what ACS is. And ACS is particular to the city of Los Angeles. And he can use his microphone. I'll give you some introduction, okay? It's Marty Wohl. His call is N6VI. That's his ham call. It's been a long time amateur radio. He's got one of these interests in a very esoteric thing in ham radio. He runs around in a vehicle with antennas on top and a lot of radios inside. And he works contests from different parts of the country and such. And it's kind of exciting, and that's one of the things he likes to do. So he keeps his training up. All right, he's a training officer for the entire, and this is ACS, and he'll tell you what that stands for. He's the Battalion 15 Communications Unit leader. You'll find that ACS is broken up into areas, and they have different people who are with different battalions. Now, he also happens to be the vice director of the ARRL Southwestern Division. That includes Arizona and Southern California. The guy's, I was going to introduce him as a head honcho in the ARRL, but I figured instead we'd give his official title. This is a man who volunteers a lot, as all of these people do. Marty, why don't you talk about ACS, what it is, and what you do?
Great. Thank you, Len, and good morning, everybody. A lot of familiar faces here, and see a lot of CERT folks and so on. By the way, those of you who just came in recently, there are sign-in sheets over here, so sometime before you leave, if you make sure you sign in so they know you were here, we'd really appreciate it. Thank you. Amateur radio is a service that's been around for over 100 years. Part of the goal of ham radio is to serve the community. Not just agencies, but the entire community, your family, your neighborhood, and so on. Some hams have organized to assist agencies that are involved in response or relief in case of disasters. And in those cases, they follow the instructions given by those agencies. It could be the Red Cross, it could be the Salvation Army. They each have their amateur radio groups that work with them. In the case of the City of Los Angeles, the Emergency Management Department has an amateur group to assist, and they are managed by the Los Angeles City Fire Department, and that group is ACS, which is Auxiliary Communications Service. And we have several of our members here. You see Jonathan, Michael, Bill. Some of us wear several hats. We're also involved in ARES. We're involved in other things as well. But the ACS basically has as its primary goal to back up the 800 megahertz dispatch system that the City of LA Fire Department uses to get calls out to the station so that they can respond. Now, when you look at our geography, unlike places in the Midwest, we have terrain to deal with. And going from, for example, this building here down toward the south and the west isn't too difficult. You don't have a lot of obstructions there. But getting up into the valley, you have considerable obstructions. So one of the things that we practice is getting mock dispatch traffic from here to the Station 88s, which is near the 101 and the 405, which would serve as one of the dispatch stations for the valley. Assuming that the city's 800 megahertz comm system, which is really based mostly on repeaters, which are little automated relay stations on mountains all over the place. It's very effective in normal times, but if it goes down, folks here would have a tough time communicating directly. They may have to send somebody up send a captain up to Mulholland Drive and he could do the relaying, but that really becomes a bottleneck. We can supplement that, and we do. So we practice getting that dispatch traffic from here and the department operating center upstairs out to 88s and to the other bureau headquarters, and from there to battalion headquarters, from there to the stations. Now that's the primary objective. Now as long as we have that network of people in place, there's obviously the potential to get information from the field back up the chain to where somebody can make a decision about allocation of what will certainly be scarce response resources. And we have done some practice and drill in that regard as well. We've mocked up infrastructure situation reports, water leaks, gas leaks, roads impassable, and so on. Well, actually, the gas leak, I guess, isn't a mock-up anymore, is it? Okay. And, okay, a gas leak that's flaming, okay, like Balboa back in Northridge quake. And they report that back up to somebody that they can reach either at battalion headquarters or my house happens to be located up on a ridge in Chatsworth where I can see a lot of downtown and so on. So somebody can act as a relay, move that traffic in an organized way back up the chain to wherever, and it may come all the way here to the Department Operating Center, and they then make a decision as to whether this warrants the allocation of resources that might be available, and they have to do the prioritization. We don't make decisions on what gets responded to. We only try to provide the information. So by extension, if you have CERT teams working in a neighborhood, for example, and they need to get some information to the outside world, saying, we have this situation, at least let the people who are doing resource allocation know about it, then that would be beneficial, and they have better information to work with to decide how they're going to allocate those response resources. Jonathan, anything else you think we ought to cover?
Unless Len wants me to go ahead and talk about the plan we've written for that.
We'll do that next.
Okay, we'll do that next.
We'll
But
do that
one of the
after.
handouts that you should have received is, and I don't know if there were enough of them to go around, but a CERT ACS comm plan. And Jonathan was the principal author of that, and he'll cover that. But you've got other agencies here represented with DCS, which is for LA County, and Robert will talk about that. We got the Amateur Radio Emergency Service, which supports the county in terms of hospitals and so on, but really is self-managed, unlike everything else. And David will talk about that. All the Aries groups in Los Angeles report up to David, who's our section manager. So for now,
Why don't you talk a little bit about what it is to be part of ACS and the kind of things that you do and the kind of practice that you do and the kind of training that you do.
okay, most of our activity is on the two most common VHF and UHF bands. Those of you who are hams know the 2-meter band and the 70-centimeter band. We have pre-designated channels in our comm plan, as many of you do in maybe your neighborhood comm plans with an FRS radio or whatever. Everybody get on channel so-and-so. Well, we do the same thing. Now, there is always the possibility that just because we have an amateur radio frequency programmed into our radio, it doesn't necessarily mean that we're going to be able to use it, because there are tens of thousands of amateur radio operators. There's over 100,000 in California, okay? And many of those active, and if something big happens, a lot of people are going to be getting on the radio to use it. And everybody is entitled. We don't reserve, we don't own channels, unlike the Part 90 radios where some frequency coordinator says, okay, you have these 5 and nobody else in your area has them. Well, any ham can use any frequency as long as you're not causing intentional, malicious, and harmful interference. So one of the things we have to do is be flexible. And so when we do our drills, we'll often, for example, we'll have dispatch traffic. One of our drills, we said, well, what if we couldn't get into the EOC? You know, imagine that. So we said, okay, let's set up our own stuff and see if we can get back to the valley using masts on our trucks and things like that. And we'll send the dispatch traffic over there. And we're using a certain frequency, but what if something happens and that frequency is busy or unusable, or there's interference from something up on the roof here, whatever it may be? Go to another one, go to another one. And when that doesn't work, we go down into what we call the weak signal segments of the band, which are single sideband. Your radios, most of your radios don't do that, but it's a very efficient mode, but you have to tune in more carefully. So we practice some of that. We've added bands in addition to the ones that are those two that I mentioned earlier. The 23 centimeter band uses much smaller antennas. It's really good at penetrating buildings, and we have been setting up stations and testing them here at 88s, at 5s, up at my place, so that we have some back channels that we can use. It's important to be flexible. Also, when you're in an area, if you've got just a handheld, you're going to be really limited in what coverage you have. And some of the areas where we got to move around and so on, yes, that's good. But a base or vehicle-mounted radio that has more power and uses an outside antenna of some sort is more desirable because you can reach further, especially if the repeaters, those relay stations that we have scattered around, are disabled for some reason. And there are a dozen reasons that they could be unusable. So as a result, we look at what kind of a signal can you get from here to there using what you have, okay? And how can you improve your station so that you can reach further and the people can hear you and you can hear them? Can you relocate your station? Can you get up to the Mulholland Drives or up to some, hilltop up above top of Reseda or something like that to improve your coverage? You may end up being a relay station for other people who can't hear one another, especially those with the low power handheld radios. So we practice using our dispatch stuff. We practice using a form that the fire department used to use before everything was computerized. They had what they call the F27A. And we took the only copy we could find, which was really in bad shape, recreated it digitally, nice and clean, added some accountability boxes at the bottom so we know where the messages came from and when, who they went to and when. Tracking messages, accountability is an important part of what we do, whether it's ACS or any of you guys, or whether it's the National Traffic System, which is volunteers that move radio messages around the country. Tracking is important, so we build that into the process. And then we send these messages, and then we have everybody send them back, usually to me because I'm the training officer, and we look for accuracy. How good a job did they do? If there was a mistake in the message, intentional or otherwise, did somebody try to correct it on the fly? That's a no-no, because you're supposed to relay exactly what you heard. Okay? If somebody made a mistake in telling you something, that's what goes in. You, as the radio person, don't know whether it's a mistake or it's intentional. So you have to be really careful to copy accurately what you hear, to get it written down clearly, and then to convey it to whomever, whether it's the person that's destined for or another station who's going to relay it on to that person. So we look at accuracy. Speed is okay, but speed is not so important. Accuracy trumps speed pretty much every time. So we really focus on getting the message through without introducing any errors or changes. And then we look at the effectiveness in being able to actually deliver that message. Can we get to the person that it's designated for? Other drills we do, we use public service events as well as training events. The March for Babies, March of Dimes, the Hollywood Christmas Parade. Many of us are involved from all of the agencies in the Baker to Vegas Relay Challenge, which is a 100-mile law enforcement race across the desert. That's when you get to give the cops tickets. If they break the rules, the runners break the rules. But they have relay teams, and they're running across the desert, some in the heat of the summer near Death Valley, and some going over Potosi in the when it's snowing. You never know. But there is no regular communication out in the desert there. There's one bush that one of our friends calls the magic RF bush, that a cell phone will work there. Other than that, you don't have that kind of coverage. So without the hams, the race couldn't go on, because runner safety obviously is critical. The Angeles Crest 100, these are really nuts. These are guys who run 100 miles solo from Wrightwood down to Pasadena through the mountains on goat trails overnight. And so runner safety becomes huge there. And it's the hams who set up ad hoc networks. We actually have data systems that we can over our ham channels, send runner data, keep track of where they are. These are all things that benefit the event in particular, but they also benefit us, because we practice setting up a station out in the middle of somewhere that's not comfortable or not known. We practice dealing with things that are going to break or fail, or something's missing, or something doesn't work. You've got to have a workaround. This is all really important, and that's why the more of this you do, the more of these situations you encounter and learn to overcome, the better off you're going to be.
Question, what if I wanted to join ACS? What do I have to go through?
The process for joining ACS basically involves going onto our website, downloading a set of forms, completing them, and sending them in. You should be aware that you will be put through a background check. So if there's something in your background that you would rather not have come up, maybe you want to join something else. And then once you do, we expect you to attend a couple of meetings a year. We have one basic training we call ACS 101, which is really about radio message handling. It's very similar to the kinds of things that Jonathan and Dan and I teach to CERT folks. It's radio protocol, okay? And getting used to those and thinking in terms of making good use of a scarce radio resource. That would be a radio channel. Remember, during a big event, you may have limited power available. And so you also don't want to be transmitting any longer than you have to, using up precious battery power, that sort of thing. Bill?
Do I have to be a ham to join ACS?
Yes, you do need to be have any level license, technician on up. You can join. And several of our folks have been involved in teaching classes to CERT groups and others. There are classes going on all over the place, and also there are people who do fine studying on their own. It's a 35-question multiple choice test to get your basic license. And you have to get, I think, 28 or more, 29 of the 35. So it's not that difficult. We've had sixth graders and fifth graders pass the test pretty easily. So
Recently, a 5-year-old got their license.
yeah.
Don't push it.
So
If you want to join the ACS and you don't have a license, and this has happened quite a few times, we will mentor you and help you get your license, and there's a number of ways of doing it.
yeah, there's all sorts of opportunities. But so you go through that, you send in the application. The licensing, we can talk to you about either later or afterward, but it's really pretty easy to get started. And there's not a lot of math, there's not a lot of electronics, some basic stuff so you kind of don't blow yourself up, and that's about it. And really so that you know the rules and so that you follow the rules, just like when you take a driver's license test. They want to know that you know the rules so that you remember to follow them, right? Same basic idea. All right, let's get somebody else here.
What about me?
So the tape picks me up. We don't have tapes anymore. I'm dating myself. My little digital recorder. We'll hold questions for everybody till the end. Okay, we're now going to.
Okay.
I'm being told what order we're. Okay, so I'll switch order. I'll switch order. After the three here who are up here have spoken, I'm going to have Jonathan talk about a very practical application of all of these things and how CERT and ACS and what we call FRS radios, and he'll tell you what FRS radios are, come into play. And I believe, is Mary here? Oh, there she is. So I believe that there's at least one neighborhood council that's purchased FRS radios. And I know of a number that have purchased some ham radios, and I've got an example of one of them that they purchased here you can look at later. David Greenhut. David, hang on, I get to introduce you.
Okay. What's it?
N6HD, I'm not sure why David wore a tie, but that's okay, you're allowed to.
He's not retired.
Oh, okay, he's not retired, there you go. David is the ARRL, American Radio Relay League, section manager for Los Angeles County. And there's a group called ARIES, and he'll tell you what that is. He oversees ARIES, and those who are members ask him the questions. He gets the hard questions, and he's supposed to have all the answers. And basically, he supervises. So we're going to ask David to talk, and then I'm going to ask John if he's going to have to leave pretty soon, or if he can. Okay, he's good. He's the guy with the new knee, and I really appreciate him coming out here today for this. So David, why don't you talk about ARIES and what you do, how it works, and what happens if you want to become a member of ARIES.
Okay, wonderful. Thank you. Let me talk a little bit about my function within the organization. I'm a ham for 41 years, and I've been involved in most aspects, many aspects of amateur radio. Several years ago, I was elected to represent the field organization within LA County. There's 71 of us around the country. We're called section managers, and our responsibilities are to run basically the programs within certain geographical areas. We're all involved. Marty and I are both elected officials with the national organization, the American Radio Relay League, made up of approximately 161,000 members, headquartered out of Newington, Connecticut. The American Radio Relay League has several goals. Before I get into that, for those that are not familiar with what amateur radio is or ham radio, and I'm sure you've read when there's a disaster, you've read in the newspapers or you've heard somewhere on the radio or on television that we're getting reports from ham radio operators from certain areas of what's going on. I can think of certain instances that stick out a little bit more where you've heard some of this, but Katrina was one of them. The Mexico earthquake back in the 70s, you heard a lot of that, and other events. One of the reasons that ham radio operators get involved in these things is one of the reasons why we have amateur radio is to have a trained pool of operators that are efficient on the radio, but also a trained pool of technical people. So that's one of the reasons why hams work so hard to show these types of things to you, or why we're so involved in this. The American Radio Relay League has 5 primary things that it really works on, and one is education, public service, advocacy, education, technology, and then we provide services to our members. It's very much like kind of the AAA of amateur radio. The programs that I have locally out here is I have the Amateur Radio Emergency Service, also known as ARIES, and you've heard a lot about that. We've got about 500 members. Actually, we have close to 600 members at this point. We work with government organizations and also non-government organizations. My 2 partners over here, we all know each other. It's a very small community. Their programs have kind of started off originally from civil defense and is now part of Homeland Security. They're all orchestrated or run by government agencies, and they kind of work closely with them. The Amateur Radio Emergency Service is not run specifically by any government agencies, although we serve agencies. In Los Angeles County, the largest agency that we're working with right now is LA County Department of Health Services. We work with their EMS department, and we back up the ReadyNet, which is the hospital. It's a system that relays to the county how many beds are available at different hospitals. We also work on providing requisition forms from the hospitals to the EMS department. The EMS department keeps this stuff, a lot of it's for statistical information during national events or local events that is then relayed to the county, and the county then relays it, relays it to the county, and then the county relays it up to the government, I'm repeating myself, up to the state government, and the state government then provides it to the federal government. Our members are all trained in FEMA courses. Most of them are trained in FEMA courses, IS 100, 200, 700, and then some have gone on to 800 and 300 and so on from there. We do work really hard to keep our personnel trained. We also run weekly nets. We hold meetings monthly. The nets, these are on-air exercises that are done weekly that for the purpose of training where you'll have one person who takes check-ins from each of the different stations, and then there's news or different reports that come out on those nets. Let's see, where else do I want to go? Any questions?
Any ham, even if you're not an ARO member.
Hey, that's true. To be in Aries, all you have to have is an amateur radio license, and you put them to work.
David, what's the process of joining? What have I got to go through? What are my obligations?
Well, there's a registration system where online where people sign up. They put in what their license class, 3 different classes in amateur radio. They put in what their capability is, what kind of training they have. And that training, by the way, we also have many people that are trained in CERT and also Red Cross. We encourage that type of thing. What was the other question, Lenny?
How do you join?
How do you join?
What sort of requirements, commitments when you join?
The commitments are basically the time that you have to put into it. We have exercises with the county that, let me go beyond that. We have exercises with the county on a regular basis. The biggest one is in November when we have the statewide medical health exercise. We also have team building exercises. We're involved in AC 100, which is the 100-mile relay race that Marty mentioned before. We also have the Baker to Vegas relay challenge that we get. That's a 24-hour race, and the hams get together for them. That's pretty much it.
I've heard those. Are those the nets where you hear call signs that aren't really ham call signs? Kind of like
No, everyone has a call sign, so they're real call signs.
what are the nets I hear that I don't know? Maybe someone knows when I hear. What's yours? Like,
Robert will tell you.
okay. All right. Thanks.
Oh, okay. I know what he's talking about.
They use
Yeah,
tacticals.
tacticals. We do the same thing, but they use it regularly on their nets. Anything else? Okay, thank you. We lost Lenny.
We'll take the one that hasn't spoken yet.
Okay, Robert, you want to talk a little bit about DCS?
You may want to say a word here.
Be introduced.
Thank you, David.
Thank you.
David, thank you. Okay, I was just talking with somebody for a second. Okay, now getting on, and I'll tell you, and once we finish with these gentlemen, we're going to have Jonathan come up. He's going to talk about what they've been talking about, how it integrates into communities and other services. Then you guys get to ask any questions you want of them, all right? Including, is ham radio fun? Yeah, it's a lot of fun. But, so Jonathan will tell you about the practical use, and then you can start asking questions about how these guys work, what they do, and why it happens. All right. Robert, let me see. Yes, WK6W. I hear that call going. I love that call. Yeah, on the radio. Okay.
Is that a ham?
He has a formal title. Now, let me see what his formal title is. That he's with the Disaster Communication Services. That's the DCS people. And he's the Staff 10 Chief Communications Officer. What that means is all of the people who do DCS, and that's LA County, he's the last civilian volunteer in line before you start with the actual LAFD people. So,
LASD.
LAS, I should know that.
This is acronyms.
I know acronyms. Never mind, I'm not going to go into when they changed to LASD, but that was another story. And somebody said that came out of a civil defense. Boy, I haven't heard that for a long time. I remember those services. But in any event, Robert is the guy who basically oversees the program throughout the entire county, okay? And he'll tell you what he does, how it works, how you can become a member of DCS, what your obligations are, and how that filters up to the state and what the program is that's followed. Everybody follows the rules, and he'll tell you about some of those rules.
You ready?
Last name, please?
Huh? Sussin, S-U-S-S-I-N.
Shall I?
There you go. Okay, Robert.
Good morning. It is actually an honor and a pleasure to be able to address this group, and I appreciate the chance just to bring a few thoughts to you. I need to mention I'm a member of ARES and ARRL, and I appreciate the note that the ham community works together. One of the sayings about the earthquake that will happen is we are all in it together, so we definitely want to work together. The Los Angeles County Disaster Communication Service is, it reports to and is activated by the Los Angeles County Sheriff. Let me paint a small picture for you, then this may add some thoughts in terms of what you want to discuss. In each county, some agency is in charge of emergencies. In Los Angeles County, the county sheriff is in charge of all emergencies. In other counties around us, it may be the fire battalion commander that's in charge of emergencies. So in Los Angeles County, the responsibility for the county falls to the Los Angeles County Sheriff's Department. In order to do communications, we have the Los Angeles County Disaster Communication Service. At the moment, we consist of about 220 members. I'll add details, but we do train and we do wear uniforms. And we operate radio rooms in approximately 21 sheriff stations throughout the county. There is an organized communications protocol, and I think it came up already, it's been mentioned, but if you're going to be part of emergency communications, it's very valuable to be part of an organized communication system so that there is a path for your information to travel. You know who you're going to call and what you're going to say. In Los Angeles County, we have approximately 88 cities. Many of the cities will contact the county sheriff at the local county sheriff's radio station if they have emergency traffic that needs to reach the emergency operations center, either here for LA City, for example, within this city, or for the county at its Emergency Operations Bureau. So DCS, as we affectionately call it, has the responsibility of being prepared to handle emergency radio traffic throughout the county. That would be traffic that needs to reach the management within the county, and as was mentioned a moment ago, the county is the conduit to the state, and the state, through our Homeland Security organization, is the conduit to the federal government. And there really is a system, and there really is an organization. It was mentioned that there are FEMA courses. I don't know how many of you are familiar with FEMA, or FEMA, everybody's heard of FEMA. Please take a look at FEMA.gov on the internet, and take a look at some of the courses that are available. We require a minimum of FEMA 100 and 700, and David mentioned also that there is a 200 and 800 series of classwork. In order to be a radio operator in the state of California and be a disaster service worker, I had to get that in, you must have at least FEMA 100 and 700. We like our members to have the 200 and 800 course as well, because then they can be a radio operator supervisor. How do you like that? Let me mention a couple of other things about DCS. We are, on the one hand, we wear uniforms, we drill frequently, we train weekly, we have quarterly training. There is a minimum hours requirement. It's not very much, but it's 48 hours a year of actual DCS time. Some of those items tend to keep people away from us. I'm sorry, it's as true. On the other hand, we have the opportunity to work directly with the Sheriff's Department, and we also have an opportunity to train with and operate communications vehicles that are in themselves. If you're really interested in radio, this becomes sort of a perk for us. We have communications equipment the size of vans. We have some that are the size of large trucks. And we have some that are 65-foot trailers, complete with TV, stereo, sonar. Okay, I made up the part about the sonar. But it's an interesting experience to operate a command post for a fire or to be prepared for the earthquake. We drill with county fire and the cities that are supported by the county sheriff. So we are as prepared as we can be. Let's see, I wanted to mention a couple of other things, but I don't want to get too far afield. So if I'm saying anything worthwhile here, one of the points is if you're going to have an emergency communications arrangement, you really need to have an organized plan for your emergency communications. It's been mentioned a couple of times already. That's why I wanted to go last. See, I don't have to say, I'm sorry, all the things that have been mentioned. But it's been mentioned a couple of times, including by Mr. Schaefer at the beginning, that if everybody with a ham radio keys up at the same time, there will be no ham radio. There will be no communications. In order for genuine emergency traffic to travel from one point to another, we need a plan. You need to be organized so that your members and your local members know who the net control person is for your group and on what frequency they'll find them. And let me perk your thinking here a little bit. I'm going to tell the story, but for the punchline. At the Santa Barbara HamCon, there was a presentation by the earthquake folks, including a person from the State Office of Emergency Management, and they said, "Are there any questions?" And a young man raised his hand and said, "I just got my radio," holding up his HT, and he said, "I want to help. What should I do?" And a gentleman from the Office of Emergency Services from the state said, and I'm now quoting Len Schaefer, "Turn on your radio and listen." And his point was, you don't just start talking, you need to hear what's going on, who's on which channel, and let's play with that for a minute. And I apologize, but I can tell many of you in the room are somehow involved with amateur radio, and some of you may wonder what it is. I don't know where we are there. But if you're gonna be on the air and you're gonna help in an emergency, beyond having a plan, you need to listen long enough to certain frequencies to figure out what's going on around you. Is there a fire? Is there a water main that's broken? Did we really have an earthquake? And so forth. Planning is a part of this conversation. If you're going to turn your radio on and listen, you will need to have radios programmed to the right frequencies. Some of you, I heard Family Radio Service radios, they have channels, but even then you need to know, your members need to know which channel they should be looking to when the emergency happens. I'm sure I made my point. So Disaster Communication Service, Len, you always have some pertinent, helpful questions here. How do we join? And go there. We have a website, which is lacdcs.org. And if you bring up lacdcs.org and look at a tab that says Join Us, you will get a menu of the steps to join. You will get some forms to fill out. It's been mentioned already, but DCS members actually do a live scan, fingerprint, Department of Justice background check. One of the things, and about the last thing I really want to say here, is that we need to know, and the sworn deputies need to know, if they see someone in the DCS uniform, they can trust us. We know how to help them. I can go on longer, but here, let me add one more dimension. DCS affords some training that's somewhat unique. We get trained in things ranging from traffic control. I personally enjoyed training with the bomb squad. We've also had training with the which they changed the name, but Transportation Service Bureau. Some of our district stations do wonderful things for their station. We're honored to have Tom Kagan sitting here in the front row. He is the DCO for the Lost Hills Malibu Sheriff Station. His station helps within the station. They help the department do DUI stops. They work with the coroner's office occasionally. Well, you do some of those things. They help with community activities. I left something out there. They search and rescue. You guys have a search and rescue division. And so it adds some excitement to ham radio that may be special with DCS. I did bring some brochures. I don't mean to force them on you, but if you're interested, we have that. And I know Lynn's going to let them ask some questions. Did I leave anything out? We did it. Thank you very much for your attention.
Okay. Now, he mentioned two things I was going to ask him to explain. He said HamCom and everything. Yeah, it means ham convention. Okay? And he mentioned HT. That's an old thing for handy-talkie, but it's really a handheld radio. Okay?
It's a trademarked Motorola term that they lost control of.
Motorola had that. That's wonderful. All right. What do we do as a practical matter, okay? We've heard about the services. You guys know about CERT. I hope you'll take your CERT. As I recall, about 80% of the people that come here are CERT trained, at least CERT 1. We're going to hear how CERT integrates with the community, with communication, and with neighborhoods. And that'll be a starting point for what I hope we can sit down and do with neighborhood councils as far as how they work with these services. The people who say, okay, I just want to be somebody who can help, and I happen to have a ham license, but I'm not going to go through the rigors of being part of this. What can we do? How can we set up? What kind of thing? Anybody here from Lake Balboa? There go the hands. Lake Balboa every Sunday morning has a net, and everybody gets to check in, which means they take their radios out of the chargers. They try them to see if they work. They make sure they can talk from where they are to wherever these, as we were told, net control person is. And then everybody says thank you, and they go back to what they're going to be doing on Sunday morning. That's a really good example of how a neighborhood council can organize and practice and know that everything works. Because I can guarantee it, if you buy a ham radio and you throw it in the drawer, and 2 years later something happens and you expect to take it out of the drawer, turn it on, and have it working, it's not going to work, okay? And if it does, you're not going to remember how to use it. So that's the purpose. Jonathan, hang on, Jonathan Zimmerman, K6JGZ. Okay, I can give you all of Jonathan's, other than the fact that he's a GIMP right now, which we won't go into. Jonathan is the LAFD, LA Fire Department, ACS Battalion Group COM for communication leader for Battalion 14. He's North Hollywood. He's also the ACS liaison to CERT. So here's your connection between the people who have been talking here, Marty and Jonathan, and the other ACS people, and Captain Wynn's group, CERT. Jonathan, along with a group, he led the group, put together a communications plan that I think could work with neighborhood councils. And he'll talk about how it would work with both ham radio and with FRS, Family Radio Service radios, which are a bit different. You don't need to go take a test or anything. And let's see what he has to say, and let's look at a practical application of what has been talked about here. Jonathan, you could, I was going to say, have a seat if you want to.
That's okay.
Hello, hello, hello. Okay. We have a handout here. It's black and white. One
side is a matrix of frequencies, and the other side is a flow chart. Does everybody have a copy of this? Because this is what we're going to talk about. Anybody need a copy? I have one extra, and we're going to have to ask you to share then, please.
That's interesting. We've got more copies up here. I figured 50 copies would kind of work.
We talk about organized plans. And one of the reasons why that is the advantage of amateur radio is all we need is a battery and a radio and an antenna. We don't need the structure, the infrastructure. We don't need a power grid. We don't need repeaters. We don't need cell phone towers. If everything else is down and this little radio is not crushed and my batteries or my spare batteries, which I keep, are working, I have communication with just this radio, probably on the valley floor, probably 4 or 5 miles, something in any given direction, maybe a little more, maybe a little less, depending on the terrain. We have almost unlimited use of frequencies throughout the spectrum, all of which are more useful for some things than others. In the disaster communication world, the two bands that are most useful to us, the 2-meter band and the 440 band, are the ones that the VHF bands and UHF bands locally, FM, those are the ones we tend to use for communications within a given area. Those bands have a limited bandwidth. There's only so much information you can put on that band at any one time. So, when the you-know-what hits the fan, and everybody who bought a $20 radio from Amazon and pulls it out of their drawer, we hope to God the battery's dead. Because they're going to get on this band, and they're going to start yammering away and asking for help or telling stories or whatever, and they're going to prevent our use of the frequencies for emergency communications. So, how do we solve that problem? We have what are called communication plans. And these are plans that are developed by each organization for their own specific purpose. The Auxiliary Communication Service has a plan. DCS has a plan. ARES has a plan of how they're going to talk to each other in an emergency. But we're all using the same frequencies, don't forget. Just because it's channel 14 on my radio, it might be channel 7 on the DCS plan. We're all sharing the same frequencies. So, how do we solve that problem? We learn how to share the bandwidth. We learn about radio etiquette. We learn about sending messages quickly. We learn about taking our finger off the button when we're not transmitting. All of these things that take just a little bit of knowledge and a little bit of practice, and that allows a large group of people to use a limited amount of frequencies in the convenient bands in an emergency. Now, that's fine for those of us that are trained to know what we're doing, but how do we get messages from the field back to the people who need to know? About 5 years ago, Captain Gerlich, who at that time was the administrator of the CERT program, came to me and said, we need a way for CERT units and CERT incident command posts to talk to the city of Los Angeles. And I spent about a year researching this, putting together what's called the ACS, the LAFD ACS CERT COM plan. But a lot of, Marty was instrumental on helping, as was John Minger and some other, AC6BB and others. What this is, and this is the matrix that has the frequencies on it, and you don't need to understand what it means just yet. It means that if you are a CERT member, and you're at a CERT incident command post, and you need to get a message up the chain of command, if you use these frequencies, the people on the other end who have the same chart are going to be listening. And that's why we have a comm plan. If the frequency I'm trying to use is being yammered on by a kid with a cheap Chinese radio, I have a backup frequency that I can go to. If you need to get a message to the city of Los Angeles, this is the way to do it. And through the city of Los Angeles, we look to the county, because even though Los Angeles has a huge population and area, we are just one of the cities in the county. And when the city needs resources that they don't have, they ask the county, and the county asks the state. So once we get up to our chain of command, we can get through the Department Operating Center or the Emergency Operations Center direct information to the county for the resources. Alternately, if long-range communications are down, we can use HF frequencies to contact Sacramento or whatever. But to follow the protocol, we would go through the county. What is the value of this to the people on the street? The people who tend to volunteer for CERT, the people who tend to be interested in emergency preparedness, the people who are willing to come to meetings like this, or join CERT groups, or be CERT call-out members, look at the kind of people they are. They tend to be bright, self-motivated, interested, interesting people who can do things and get things done. And we are all in a position to help each other, and those who might not be thinking so clearly, if we can communicate. If I can tell you, anybody in this room, what I need, almost anybody in this room can figure out a way to get it to me. So how do I do that? I use a radio. It's a force multiplier. I don't have to send 2 runners. I can talk to you on the radio. The CERT-COM plan starts with family service radios, $25, no license. Limited range, a very sophisticated radio, requires some practice to operate properly. You still need to know radio etiquette and protocol and bandwidth sharing, but anybody can operate one of these. And our plan calls for using FRS radios at the local CERT tactical area. I have an incident, I have a command post, I'm the CERT comms officer at the command post, we pick an FRS frequency, whatever's clear. People who are on our incident use that frequency, they get back to me, they don't have to have a runner, they can talk to me on the radio. I then talk to the incident commander, tell him what's going on, he makes a decision, I either pass the decision back to the field or on up through the channel using amateur radio. That's the other side of this. It sounds confusing, but it's not. The channels for any given battalion are the battalion number. The channel for Battalion 1 is CERT 1. The channel for Battalion 14 is CERT 14. The channel for Battalion 9 is CERT 9. So once you program these in your radio, if you know what battalion you're in, you know what the frequency is that you should be using. It works based on the fire department philosophy that multiple incidents have happened in adjacent areas all over the city. So if it seems a little robust and complicated, it's not. It's just intended to be bulletproof. So if you look at the bottom of the flow chart, you'll see flow of information. What that means is, from your location, your CERT command post, you can send, using the proper frequency, a message to the local fire station, which is called the originating station. And if the local fire station is manned, which it probably won't be, chances are they might have, I need bandages or whatever. They may or may not be able to solve the problem, and the problem ends right there. But chances are the local station is not going to be staffed. So we would go to the battalion station, which would probably set up in a unified command with the cops and everybody else. And that has its own special frequency, not special, but a designated frequency. And if the battalion chief can handle the problem, that message gets sent back down the line, the problem's solved. If the battalion can't handle it, it goes to the bureau. And if the bureau can't handle it, it goes to the operations officer, which is probably going to be here, in fact, right upstairs, the Department Operating Center. And the decision is made there. If they can't solve the problem, they go to the EOC, or the county, or the state. That's the flow of information. Why so many steps? So many steps because every step of the ladder needs to know what's going on for situational awareness. Yes, it's going to take more time, but yes, it's going to save time and resources because you only have to go as far up the communication chain as you need to go to get your information to the person who needs to know it, who can help you. And the rest of this is just a flow chart. It looks complicated, but it's just, this is the flow of authority. But remember, it's from the CERT IC to either the battalion, either the originating station or the battalion station, is where those of us in the field can be most useful. And anyone with an FRS radio can be part of the plan. What is the biggest problem we have with the plan right now? By the way, we've exercised it. We did it at the Tarzana earthquake drill. It was very successful. We used it at the San Pedro drill last year. The biggest problem with our plan is the finger. It's the finger on the radio. That's the biggest problem with our plan. The person operating the radio doesn't have, or is limited in their basic skills in understanding how to efficiently and usefully operate a radio. And that is something that we teach. We teach FRS, radio operation, for CERT members. There's no reason why this plan has to be stuck with CERT units. We could have the Midtown NoHo Command Center, and Mary could be there with the radio, getting information up and down. It could be some other organization. This plan is completely scalable because it works on a incident to battalion level. And right now it's written for CERT, but it certainly could be opened up to neighborhood councils or any other organization that needs to get information to the city of Los Angeles and hopefully to the county of Los Angeles. Does this make any sense? I hope.
Jonathan, I have a question for you. Maybe I'm just a little lost on this, but the incident location, that flow, is that from a ham operator, or is that where, gee, there's a big fire or something going on?
That's where the fan is.
Yeah, that's the fan. Yeah, exactly. The incident location is where CERT members are deployed to perform their basic initial search and situational awareness and triage. And you might have a ham radio there, but we prefer you use FRS. Why? Important point. We talked about limited bandwidth. We do not have enough frequency capability in the 2 meter and 440 channels, the bands, the two bands that are most convenient to use for this. We are stressed at best just with the organizations we already have. FRS radios, on the other hand, because they have limited power and limited distance capability, that is not a handicap, that's an advantage. It means we have more FRS frequencies available to us because the signal propagation is less. And if you are within a block or two of your incident location, and we know this because we've tested it rigorously, these work just fine. And yes, they work up to half a mile and sometimes a mile, but you can't count on that depending on the terrain and everything else. So figure you're going to work within a couple of block radius, and if you follow the rules, your CERT command post should be closer than that to a specific incident. And if for some reason you need to get further than that, you can set up a relay, a person in the middle, relaying messages back and forth. So these are the basic skills that we can teach anyone on how to use a radio. It is not a cell phone. And you can't use it like a cell phone without wasting bandwidth and interfering with everybody else. So that's what we offer. We teach the classes, and we also teach classes in emergency communication, period. Doesn't matter what the device or method is. How do you communicate in an emergency? It's not necessarily intuitive. It's a skill that you can be taught by people who've been doing this for many, many years, figuring out the best ways to do it. A lot of which most of which comes from amateur radio, how they learn to handle messages in difficult situations in the past. If you learn how to speak crisply and effectively in an emergency, whether using a radio or the 911 operator cell phone, two things happen. One, first of all, the person on the other end instantly understands you know what you're talking about, because you're speaking their language. And secondly, you're giving them the information they need in the order they need it so they can be dispatching the equipment before I'm even finished talking. And believe me, they will. That's how quick they can be, if you know how to talk. If you visit the 911 centers and listen in on the calls, on many, many of them, the first minute or so is the operator trying to find out, what's the problem? Why are you calling us? What's going on? Okay, somebody's throwing up. Okay, somebody's difficult breathing. Okay, yes, I know it's your mother. Where are you? Okay, I know you're home. Where do you live? Finding out, just pulling information out of whoever's on the phone, and sometimes that takes a minute or longer, which could be life-threatening. So it works to the citizens on the ground, straight up to the county as necessary. It works scalably throughout the entire city. We teach how to do it and how to use it. We've been pushing the plan for about 5 years, and to be quite honest with you, up until recently, there hasn't been a lot of interest in it because everyone just said they're going to use their cell phones. Now we're getting a lot of interest, We're being asked to teach more classes than we can handle, so we're bringing on people like Michael and others to teach some of these classes. This is available to you. It's free, and we'd be more than happy to share it with you and even help you tailor it to your own specific situation.
Yeah, just quickly, when you're talking about a certain channel, you're talking about an FRS channel, is that correct?
No, the FRS channels are FRS channels. CERT 1 through 25 are amateur radio channels, and they're on this matrix here. And the number of the channel corresponds to the number of the battalion.
Can I understand?
I came up with that. I'm very proud of it. It worked. Bill?
I just want to make a point about all these numbers and channels and frequencies, with the one exception of FRS, GMRS, which is pretty much a standard by the manufacturers. All the other stuff is made up. CERT 2, Channel 2 doesn't exist until we said it will be CERT 2. Aries 607 doesn't exist until we said that's the number it's going to.
And it may be the frequency is CERT 2. We'll find that out. May have to switch.
A lot of duplicate frequencies. Aries claims 500 to 600 channel or numbers for frequencies that duplicate everybody else, so it's easy to switch. So we don't have to say, what is their frequency 2? We just give you a number, you look it up, you have it programmed, you go there. So all these other numbers are just a way to make it easier to identify. Just like the battalions, just like the CERT unit, you might have, it's what they would call a tactical identifier. You're at a shelter, okay, so you're at the Loma Linda Hospital. You're at the Van Nuys shelter. You're at the Granada Hills Incident Command. It's names that are made up that are assigned to something. They don't exist anywhere else. You go to Chicago, you say, what's CERT 2? They're going to say, huh? It won't make any sense unless you hear it with this plan. And they may have a plan too with the same numbers and the same frequencies, but it's totally different. So don't get confused with all the other stuff that we're talking about between all these numbers. It basically all boils down to what frequency are you going to operate on. You don't remember channel 2 is 57 megahertz, you know it's channel 2. That's how it works.
Sure.
Jonathan, I want to follow up on something Chuck said. What I had assumed is that when you talk about FRS, like in our community, we'll have like 10 or 12 block captains, FRS. They're instructed to link with the one ham operator, and I thought this first box here, instant location, was the ham, and if you will, the box to the left, would, box 0, would be the FRS, and the FRS communicating to the one ham in the community would be the linkage that gets you on this chain of command. Is that not correct?
No, very close. If you look at the first box, it says incident location. That is wherever you are that something is happening and the CERT incident command post, because there should be close by. If you have a CERT amateur radio operator in your community, that becomes the CERT amateur radio officer for that incident. And that officer, radio officer, has the full authority to decide how he's going to make or she's going to make the FRS frequencies and other frequencies that are available to them work for them in their specific situation. And you may decide you have 2 incidents or 3 incidents, and you might be on 2 or 3 different frequencies, and you might have to bring in other ham radio operators to become part of the plan and help, but that's fine. You can scale this as simple as one simple incident, or you can do a citywide disaster. It'll still work.
What I still apologize, but how does the FRS group that's on site get onto the flow of information chart here? I had thought it was the ham at the incident location.
This plan starts with the ham radio operator at the command post, who's gathering his information any way he can, by FRS, by Kids on Bicycle, by direct observation, by whatever. But in order, FRS is useful at that tactical level because it's economical, people don't need licenses, and it's a force multiplier. It enables fewer people to get more work done.
Got it, thank you.
Jonathan, I tell you what, just basically getting down to simplistic terms, if you will. There's an incident. We're all neighborhood councils here, and similar to the government, the core of the government is safety of the people. And the core of the neighborhood councils, I think, would be, safety of their constituents.
Absolutely.
Okay, so with that said, there's an incident that happens. If it's obviously a 6-point earthquake or something, everybody's going to know about it. Everybody's going to be aware of it. However, if it's a fire that's coming, we're in the hillside area, so we go 405 Laurel Canyon, Mulholland to Sunset in our area. We have a bunch of HOAs rather than a neighborhood council consisting of a group of people. And with that said, if there's a fire, first somebody's going to call 911, let them know, or as I would see it, you have your CERT groups with basically the command center, as you mentioned it, okay? And from there, you have the FRS groups that would be communicating amongst that community or neighborhood council, and from there, you need a ham operator to let you know what's going on the other side of the world.
To get up the chain of the command, you need to get out of the FRS world and into the amateur radio world. That's correct.
Okay. And so the benefit, I think, to the neighborhood councils, and you guys are probably going to hit on it more, is communications. If you have doctors in a command center, and doctors need other facilities or whatever the case, how are you going to get them without somebody with a ham radio going community to community?
Exactly. You're exactly right. And in your case specifically, because you are organized and you do have people that are trained, there's no reason why a lot of this initial work couldn't be done in-house by your group and the people that you know and the resources you have available. You have resources in your neighborhood. And since it's going to take a long time before the professionals can respond, because they're going to be tied up at hospitals and nursing homes and high-rises, any problems you can solve with your own resources or mollify with your own resources are going to make things better for all concerned. This plan says CERT on it, because that's the way it was written. But it could say the Los Angeles Auxiliary Communication Service Neighborhood Council Comm Plan. And in many ways probably should say that, because this plan is written for groups of people who are organized in a command and control structure, like CERT or the neighborhood councils are, to gather situational awareness in an incident, transmit that situational awareness to the first person they can, which might be someone on their neighborhood council or the person with the keys to the cache or whatever, and indicate the problems they have, and maybe that person can solve those problems. If that person can't solve those problems, it goes up to the next step. And maybe the battalion chief can. Maybe he can send water or whatever. And you just keep going up or down the chain of command as necessary. When we get the big one, it's going to be all hands available on deck. Absolutely all hands on deck. And yes, I'm wearing my blue hat, but I also have a green one at home. And most everybody else here belongs to the other organizations. I'm going to do what is best for myself and my family and my neighborhood, which is first of all take care of my wife and my house and my immediate neighbors, and then I'm going to put on whatever hat is necessary. I'll probably put on the blue hat first, because we are a command and control agency. And we have access to communication. We do not self-deploy. The Auxiliary Communication Service does not self-deploy. We work under command and control. What we do is when we have a disaster or anything, our first priority is turn on the radio and listen, which should be everybody's first priority. And if we can, we help each other on the radio figure out what's going on. For instance, last summer we had a power blackout for a considerable amount of time, and I was on the radio on battery because we're self-supplied, talking around the city, and we discovered about half the city in spots had power and about half didn't. So we knew it wasn't a disaster. We knew the power was going to come back on, and it did. But that problem, how long is my power going to be out? I was able to solve with my radio by talking to people around the city, and the problem stopped right there. Had I needed more resources, we could have gone up to the battalion headquarters and say, you know, my wife is breathing machine and needs, or whatever. There's all kinds of things that we can do if we can talk to each other.
How do we make a reservation to have the communications training? What's the procedure for that?
Talk to me. Talk to me and we'll be happy to do it. I'll give you my card. This is something that's very near and dear to me. I've been pushing this for 5 years. And the fact that, because I know what's going to happen, guys. Believe me, I know what's going to happen. I'm also a production manager and an assistant director on large movies. And I work with groups of 70 to 100 people under high stress situations all the time. And I know how useful radios are to us. When we started out, the radios were big bricks and they were crystal controlled and they cost about $3,000 or $4,000 and $1970. What is that today? 15 grand, 20 grand, something like that. So we only had 1 or 2 or 3 on the, well, not one, but you had 2 or 3 on a set, and they were handy. Now, because radios are so inexpensive and we have so many frequencies, every single person on our film set is wired with an earpiece, no squawking in the radios. And if I want grips, I go to channel 8. If I want electricians, I go to channel 7. If I want drivers, I go to channel 3, or whatever. And we can just talk back and forth. It is such an incredible time saver. It's unbelievable. Or you can just monitor what's going on, you know. The UPM can be back in the trailer with a scanner just monitoring what's going on. We're not eavesdropping. We're trying to help. Yes, we are eavesdropping, but we're trying to help, you know. So I've been on situations where the radios went down or whatever, and we had to do it the old-fashioned way, and it is so inefficient. It wastes so much time to have to try to make a movie without radios. It's going to be the same thing in a disaster. If we can use radios, we are going to solve our problems much more quickly, and maybe solve problems that couldn't be solved any other way. And if anyone is interested in learning how to do it, call me. I'm happy to help you out any way I can. Or Marty, or any of us will. I mean, this is something that we all believe in.
Well, everybody knows how to find me. Everybody knows my email, at least it looks like everybody in the city knows my email. Jonathan, thank you very much.
I'm happy to give you my email if anybody wants. It's not a problem.
Okay, we're gonna get into the general questions in just a second. Okay, here is a good.
They want his email.
They want his email. Okay.
Email is my name is Jonathan Zimmerman, and the email. Sorry, it's a long one, but get used to it if you have a long name. J.G. Zimmerman, Zimmerman at sbcglobal.net. It's not a .com, it's a .net for some reason.
Repeat it one more time.
J.G. Zimmerman, J.G.Zimmerman at sbcglobal, sbcglobal.net, N-E-T. And if you send the email, just remind me where I met you, and just to refresh my memory, because I get a lot of emails.
Okay, and everybody knows it's my first name dot last name at lacity.org. They actually give me one of those things. I could give you the other ones, but that one's probably the easiest one to find me. All right, now you know how these things are beginning to relate, okay? And we're going to get into more of this as we go on. How do we do this? So what we need, and I know a couple of people have sent me emails saying, yes, we'd want to be part of it. Remember the, first of all, heart back, the 5-step for emergency preparedness that Mona Curry talked about? Have any of you guys gone to the website and looked at that? Anybody? We got a couple. Okay. If you go to the Emergency Management Department as part of LA City, you just put in Google, LA City Emergency Management Department, their website will come up. You go to that website and you're going to see certain things, one of which is the 5-step program. If you look at the 5-step program for organizing your area, it helps you, what do you do to organize your area? And then we look at what Jonathan's been talking about. It's the start of a program. Now, Like I say, I've had a couple of volunteers, they've been hams. Maybe we've got some non-hams who want to volunteer. But what I'd like to do is I'd like to start developing a program like Jonathan has talked about, and it's a good way to base it, for neighborhood councils. I'll be very honest, we're going to have some neighborhood councils that embrace it. We're going to have some that have to have their arms twisted, and we're going to have some that are just going to say it's not for us, okay? But here's what I think we can look at. And Robert said it very succinctly, so it'll be part of this little talk. We have to be able to communicate within our communities. Who better than neighborhood councils? We're already there, we have a structure, okay? We have to be able to talk to the communities next to us, the other neighborhood councils. Again, we have a structure. But as Robert said, there is nothing so far, there's no ordinance that says the earthquake stops at city boundaries, okay? We have cities on all sides of Los Angeles, and they're part of LA County, which means they're part of Robert's DCS. And if I live in San Pedro, and I can't get somebody to pass things up the line for ACS, who might I want to try and get a hold of? Well, I'd want to try and get a hold of somebody with DCS in Torrance, perhaps. And maybe they have the resources to help us at that moment, okay? Everybody says, these guys never talk to each other. Well, that's not true, okay? As you see, yeah, just the opposite. Maybe the bureaucrats, maybe LASD doesn't talk to LAFD and things like that, okay? But the amateurs talk to each other. You know, when I was in the DA's office, there was a saying, a grade 4 deputy was the guy who was in charge, or the woman who was in charge of the court and supervised other lawyers, okay? And we always said, we don't care who the DA is, the grade 4s can always do their job. Same thing. We don't care who's at the top of the sheriff's department, who's at the top of the fire department, or anything else. These guys, just like all of you guys, volunteers, they can get their jobs done.
But, you know, when we, if you'd been here early, you would have seen about 9 hams, all of them got here early, from representing neighborhood councils, DCS, ACS, Aries, and so on. We all know each other, we all talk with each other, and so many different venues. And, you know, the whole idea of interoperability, you hear it all the time, and it's this goal that many agencies and responders have, or actually that the government's overseeing these agencies, that everybody can talk to everybody else. There are even plans to do this on a national level. But I'll tell you, it's never going to work, okay? There's not enough time to tell you all the reasons it's not going to work, but it's not going to work, okay? The reason we have interoperability is because we talk to one another when there isn't a disaster. We talk to one another for fun. We do competitions, we do drills, we do all sorts of stuff, just social discussions. Get together for breakfasts and things like that. It's, communicating is what we do, we're used to it. And, we don't have to think twice about how to get hold of somebody. We just do it. And there are so many options that we have, and it may not work the first time all the time, but we'll get there. We'll get there. Can I throw in a quick pitch? There are a couple of events coming up that I'd like people to be aware of.
Go ahead, then I'll tell them one of my stories.
Okay. In the weekend, let's see, it's a March. First, if you like to travel a little bit, you go down to Yuma, Arizona on February 21st. There's going to be a big ham convention there. It's actually for the whole ARL Southwestern Division. There's a swap meet with radios and stuff. There are vendors there. There are classes going on, training on all sorts of areas. It's only $5 to get in, so it's almost free. Carpool with some folks. Go down there. It's a Friday and Saturday. It's a blast. It's at the Yuma County Fairgrounds, and people come from all over the country to go to this thing. There are a lot of folks from Canada, from the East Coast, and so on. So that's the sort of thing that you can have a lot of fun with. In March, there's a Palm Springs event where I'm going to be doing a talk on how to troubleshoot when you're a non-techie, okay? How to figure things out. we have this sort of training all the time. Our ARES meetings for the Northwest District, which is the San Fernando Valley, the first Saturday of every month at Valley Presbyterian Hospital in Van Nuys. We always welcome visitors. People come there to take their license exams. We give exams there. But we always welcome visitors if they just want to see what's going on. You don't have to be a ham.
And this Saturday, we're doing a program with the National Weather Service, the Weather Spotter Service, and that will be a training program as well. And that's a perfect opportunity to come down and see some of the stuff that we do. And let me add one more thing. I'm going to sideline you a little bit. There are 20,000 ham radio operators in LA County, and that's a fact. Those people are ready to be tapped. Many of them are not active. You can look those people up in your community and get them involved in this program, and this is a perfect time to do that.
Jonathan.
Let me just make one comment. Emergency communications is not political. It is specifically not political. It is part of our charter and part of our design not to be political. We are here to serve whoever it is that needs our services, period. There are people in the past, and probably will be in the future, who have attempted to use comm plans or areas or geographic whatevers politically to say, well, we'll be in charge of this and you'll be in charge of that. And we'll something. Okay, fine, you can try to do it all you want to, but we'll run over you. Because we're only interested in getting the message where it needs to go. And you might want to be political in your area or whatever. Doesn't matter to us, but you're wasting your time. We are here to help you. I'm here, I live in Mary's district. I am here to help Mary, period. And whatever Mary needs in her council in my area, I'm going to do the best I can. End of story. And it's very refreshing when you think about it. So don't worry about the politics of it, because there shouldn't be any.
Okay, I'll tell you, it was mentioned, I was down in New Orleans not that long after Katrina. And if you talk to anybody there on the street, they had a love for ham radio operators. Because for the first almost 3 weeks after Katrina, the only real local communications they had were ham radio operators. You know, the guys with the fancy satellite telephones, there weren't enough of those to go around to anybody, and sometimes they didn't work.
David was one of those down there.
Yeah, he was down there, my nephew was down there. But I'll tell you, what they said is true. You can throw a wire up in a tree, you've got a battery you can operate. So this is a good start. I'm glad some of you had interest. Ham radio classes, if you want to become a ham radio operator. One of our own, Mark, has a class. He's got one of what I call the lengthy real classes. He actually sits down and talks to you about theory and everything else.
Well, you mean actually learn how to use a radio?
There you go.
And why it works.
And why it works. If you say, hi, I don't have that much time, but I'd like to get an amateur license. We've got a gentleman who teaches a one-day class, 1 day. He does send you material at the beginning, you know, here, look these up, look this up. It's on a Sunday morning. It's out at Lost Hills Sheriff Station. Now, I know that's a schlep for some people. You know, that's a long ways, trust me. And as a matter of fact, Robert and Tom and I were there last Sunday because there was a class studying and taking their exam, and a bunch of hams get out there, and we volunteer to monitor them and to grade their papers. And that's a one-day class. He then holds one the next Sunday on what?
Saturday.
Sunday or Saturday?
Saturday. They're all Sunday.
Sunday, yeah. On what radio should I buy? And then on the third Sunday, after you've bought your radio, you bring it back and say, okay, how do I program this and turn this thing on? And it's a continuous thing, and it's one fee for all 3 classes. And the first one you get there, they actually serve you lunch and everything else, and you pay for the whole thing. And if you walk out, what's he got now? About a 95, 97% pass ratio? I think when we have 35 people there on Sunday. Okay, out of, no, everybody but 2, because one of them retested. I sat and watched him retest, and I graded his paper. So, right, so if everybody who was there, about 35 or 37 people, 2 people didn't pass, and one of them was going to come back. As a matter of fact, she's coming back tomorrow, I assume, and she's going to retest. So you've got that. It's not a difficult thing, but as Jonathan said, there's FRS radio, and Mary's neighborhood council has chosen to pick up FRS radios, Mary Garcia, and you know, you don't need the same kind of licensing for that. Now, what we want to look at is, we want to look at a proposal, a plan you can work off of. Jonathan's can form something specific to neighborhood councils along with the 5-step program. 1, how do you organize your neighborhoods? How do we get out there and go block by block? We did it in Tarzana. We did a 1 4-square block area that included various things. There was a school and everything else, and we had an exercise. That's the one I say I had a choice between a 2-year-old's birthday party and the exercise. Guess which one I chose? Okay? So I wasn't there for that, but I was there at the meetings when they organized and everything. And they used the 5-step program on how to organize this little block of houses and the school and such as that. So we need to combine that type of thing with Jonathan's type of program, and we'll become better prepared for disasters. Because when Lucy Jones earthquake hits, you can be guaranteed that the people who we expect to respond, the fire department, the police department, etc., they're going to be at the big communication centers, or excuse me, the population centers. They're not coming out to our residential areas to go. You live in a high-rise downtown, you're probably going to be more likely to see LAFD and LAPD and everybody else down there. If you happen to live someplace up in the hills, you happen to live someplace in the valley, you live down in San Pedro, you're probably not going to see anybody, at least for 3 days, okay?
Well, they're going to be out. They're going to be out surveying their neighborhoods. That's what they're trained to do. At least in fire.
Well, the CERT people, yeah. The
fire department.
Oh, the fire department. Yeah, if they can get there. If they can get there. You know, we've had a hand. Okay, now what we're going to get into is we're going to get into some general questions, if you have any, and then we're going to. I've got some back here first, and then we're going to talk for just a minute. Hang on just a second.
Hi, Suzanne Lewis with Neighborhood Council Valley Village. We have the radios, we have ham operators in our community. We're just beginning to implement the 5-step program. In fact, we have another CERT class on the 30th of this month. What do we do next? What's the next step to feel, I don't feel organized. I feel like I'm so happy you're doing this, but what do we do next?
Call Jonathan.
Contact Jonathan.
Contact Jonathan. Well, no, it's more than that. It's, you probably need to speak to someone who, once you've done the work you can as a local group, you probably need to speak to someone who is familiar with emergency management. It could be someone from here or from the empowerment group. Let them review what you've done and make suggestions as to what you've done right in areas where you might want to do something otherwise, and assess where you are. Then you'll be able to take concrete steps. Okay, we've done this, we've done that, but we don't have our communication group ready yet, and we haven't sent out the addresses to all the people who have access to the cache, or, you know, there's a bunch of things that you might want to do, and you're not expected to know how to do this. This is not necessarily intuitive. I mean, some of it you can just collect stuff in your garage, but there are people who specialize in organizing these kinds of groups. For instance, one of the things you may not think of that's in huge demand after a disaster is diapers. I mean, think about it. All the kids that need diapers, all of a sudden they don't have diapers. It becomes a huge problem. So they recommend you stash a certain number of diapers, depending on, you know, how many people live in your area. Those kinds of things. Bleach. bleach can do wonderful things. It can purify drinking water. It can sanitize things that need human waste. There's all kinds of things. These are things that are easy to collect and store in bulk, and you're going to need them. Plastic tarps, cribbing, all that kind of stuff. There's a lot of things that you can do, but you're not expected to know how to do it. You can ask and get help.
Okay.
David, turn it on because you're being recorded.
Does this one? If you already have the ham radio, he should talk to Jonathan. Just because a guy has a ham radio license doesn't mean he's going to be effective. They have a structured program, people to talk to. Your guy needs someone to talk to. He should talk when an event happens, and he should be part of this system that they're talking about.
Is Steve Weinberg part of your group?
Yes.
Okay, because I know he's set it up with commercial radios. Part 90, it costs a little more, but nobody needs a license, and you have the frequencies more or less exclusively. So, there are other options there if one turns out to be too difficult for you.
Hi. Bob, WB6ABU, going back to 1962. Okay, I think that what I've heard is we have a really excellent top-down start. Sounds to me like the LA Fire Department, the Sheriff's Department, LAPD have done an awful lot of work on this, and what we need is some sort of bottom-up. And what I mean by that is when Lucy Jones's earthquake hits in San Pedro, there's going to be 72,000 people who are on their own, and there's about 50 who will know something. So one of the things I need is a presentation of maybe a half an hour to give to my own neighborhood council. I think that this organization will be the nucleus of this whole operation, and we'll start to develop it. I'll also point out, I think that the neighborhood council is a place to recruit people. It's a nice crystallization jar. It's not the organization that's going to run things. Those of us who've been in this thing for 15 years understand that neighborhood councils are not like police stations. They don't work that way. The other thing that was kind of interesting to me is the remark about communicating to 911. Because I never have trouble communicating to 911, and it never takes more than about 20 seconds, particularly on the freeway. And I think that a general sort of effort to teach people how to be terse and clear would be useful. I mean, I always start out with, I'm on 101 northbound. Maybe that's the right way, maybe that's the wrong way. Do you, any of you, Aries, for example, have a map that has all the active ham radio operator emergency people on it?
No.
This came up the last, okay. Let's not discuss
Not a
that.
map. There are too many.
There's databases.
But there are
Okay,
databases.
whatever,
We can
okay.
get to that.
Because in my neighborhood council and in all the rest of yours, we're going to want to know.
It's online.
Yeah.
Okay, but I don't know.
Yeah, okay. You can go to the FCC's universal licensing
Well,
system and put in a zip code, and you can see, you get a list of all the hams that are in that zip code, and it typically will be several hundred.
What you get is a list of all hams who have put their addresses in for that zip code. They may not even live there, for example.
But
it's a
most do. I mean, at least
Okay.
it's a good start.
Yeah, well, we're beating this to death because
Yes, we
the thing is, it has to be integrated with the emergency preparedness this week system. We need an interface with the broadcast radio stations, and I don't know whether that's being done, and certainly the public doesn't know where to listen. I bitched about it endlessly because when we have power outages, how do I know when it's going to end? You know, well, it turns out that cell phone people who have those smartphones know. I don't have one, so okay. Thanks.
There seems to be a feeling that we need some bottom-up help. One way to get it is you can take the fire department CERT training, which will teach people in the community, give them some emergency response training. I have a different program that is focused specifically on building neighborhood teams that can operate inside their neighborhood, inside a neighborhood council, to find all of the incidents, all the people that are injured, and then safely get them out using proper extraction methods, backboard stretchers, scoop stretchers, and so forth, and transport them to the hospitals or casualty collection points. So if you have any need for that, you can see me. I can give you my contact information.
Okay, I just have a question. You had mentioned meetings like the first Saturday of every month at Valley, but there was no times for any of the...
The doors open at 8 a.m. Meeting usually starts by about 8:15, but there's a lot of networking going on in the first 15, 20 minutes. And that's in the training building, which is actually adjacent to the main hospital. As you're facing it from Van Noen, it's on the right down the stairs.
As a matter of fact, you were talking about the Aries meeting. If you go, right?
Yeah.
If you go to the Aries website.
ARRLLAX, Alpha Romeo Romeo Lima, Lima Alpha X-ray.org, and click on Aries and click on the Northwest District. You'll get all that information.
Yeah, they got it all online. They got it all online.
One more question. Also, you had mentioned in March in Palm Springs that you're going to have a discussion on how to troubleshoot.
Yep.
Do you have a date?
I don't have the date right with me. If somebody happens to know right off the bat, you can go online. It's Palm Springs Hamfest, all one word, .org, and all that information with directions and everything else will be there.
Okay, I just want to thank all three of you. Thank you so much for doing this. This has been great.
Okay.
The information on the Ham Fest and other ham radio conventions activity is also on the same website that he gave before, which is ARRLLAX.org, and I think there's probably about 4 or 5 conventions that are in there.
How do we figure out which fire battalion we're in?
There are maps of the fire department organization on lafd.org. That is the fire department's own website. They have maps showing the station locations, station numbers, the battalions, and now the bureaus. There's one being held up right behind you.
Just put in your zip code.
And you could, as Bill points out, you can put in your zip code and tell you which one you're in. But you should know that. Know where your fire stations are, know the hospitals, and know, if you get an idea of how they're organized. This is, we talked earlier about taking these FEMA classes. They're all free, and most of the ones that were mentioned earlier, 100, 200, 700, 800, it's 4 to 5 hours online, at home. You're done, you're free, you get the certificate, your information is registered with FEMA, so that you can always get a certificate and show that you passed these things. So, and it describes the basic methods by which agencies that may have differing titles for things and differing procedures can work together, just like on a big fire. That's how this started, with one fire department showing up to help the Berkeley fire, but none of their hardware fit the hydrants, and they realized that they were all in separate little cells, and they needed to be able to work together. Common communications, common terminology, common organization structure.
It's scalable.
And it's scalable from a small incident to a very, very large ones. So, go take those courses. It's nothing. It takes a few hours. It will start to introduce you to how the responders work, okay? And that will be helpful to you.
It's sort of like taking the ethics and funding online.
Except easier.
But probably a lot more interesting.
And it doesn't change every year.
Yeah, there you go. So, all right. I'll give you a couple of. There's one back here before I do that.
Yeah, thanks. Jed Palker, Venice Neighborhood Council. I came out to California in 1978, and I remember fondly my first very mild earthquake out here. I've been preparing, and many of us in our communities have been preparing for the earthquake for 40 years and more. My question is about succession. We talked about ham radio having a recent increase in interest. I'm interested in both the assessment of why that increase has happened and what possibilities there are for succession, for new technologies taking over as time goes on. What are the thoughts about that?
One answer is that they got rid of the Morse code.
Okay, I'll tell you a couple of things, and then somebody can add. One, my assessment is a lot more people are interested in emergency communications than used to be. That's number one. Number two, if you've got some people who are techies, ham radios now integrate into the internet. They build things. People used to build radios. Now they build little mini computers and repeaters that they can put in the back of their cars and their car trunk and work off their cell phones. And there are things that I look at and say, boy, I don't understand. I know what you're doing, but I just don't understand how you're doing it. So that's another part, at least from what I've seen, is part of the new interest.
Katrina was a huge impetus for that, and we got a lot of new hams and a lot of new organization. And CERT emerged out of that as well, and to a certain extent, there's a lot of ham radio interest in there as well.
Okay, yeah. So, all right. Jonathan, you wanted to say one last thing?
I just want to make one final announcement. One final pitch. One of my true loves and what got me into amateur radio in the first place was CERT. I started out as CERT, as Patrick and others have done, and were recruited into joining the ACS. And so I have a green hat as well as a blue hat. We are teaching a CERT class in the Valley in North Hollywood starting March 2nd. It's at Fire Station 89. If you are not CERT trained, I highly recommend you become CERT trained. It's a huge return for a minimal investment on your part, and it's free. You can go to the cert-la.com website and look for classes, and that class is listed there, and you can sign up. It's a class that I'm promoting. I hope I get some people there. We've heard complaints in the past that we weren't paying enough attention to the East Valley and the North Valley, so here's the class. It's my hometown, so please put the word out. March 2nd, Fire Station 89.
Where's 89?
706 Laurel Canyon, south of Sherman Way.
How many miles is that?
From here?
Oh, really? Oh, it's further. Oh, okay. I keep thinking of my place is 25 miles. I forget about that.
It's the 170 up to Sherman Way, and that's it.
And you know, we'll continue to communicate with Captain Wynn with regards to the CERT and everything. I'll leave you with this before we take off. I'm working on two things specifically. I don't know how they're going to work out. I may need the help of the neighborhood councils. One is our perennial emergency bin problem. And maybe we found a way to solve it, but it's going to take some money from the city and some help from some city officials and things like that, but we're hoping.
That's the Fargo container?
Yeah, it's the Fargo. You call him Fargo. He's from San Pedro. They call him Fargo because they got this big port down there and things like that. We call them containers.
We call them cans.
Cans, okay. The other is a seat at the table, and so far everybody says, yeah, there's no reason why not. And I've just been told after pushing for a couple of weeks that the email list that I wanted has arrived, and I'll be sending out emails to the different NC boards in the commission areas and asking for them to get volunteers. What we want to do is we want to get people who can meet. Now these meetings occur during the day. I mean, that's when city employees meet, but it's their emergency management committee. And I've said I want neighborhood councils at that table to work with the city, with their emergency management planning. And so far, everybody has said yes, and I want to get it moving because the guy who's in charge of this place right here, Jim Featherstone, he retires in March. And I don't want to have to work with somebody new and train them. So that's the two things that I'm personally going to be working on. And I'm going to need the help from the neighborhood councils in getting some volunteers or how we're going to choose them, what have you, but I want people at the table. And so far, the city says yes. And Jonathan, you wanted one more thing?
something very important I neglected to mention. The documents I handed out today are in process. That is not the actual plan that is in use today. The plan that you'll see on the CERT website is not this plan. It still says North Division and South Division. This will be the plan, probably as soon as next week, but it might not be exactly in the form that you see it there. There's one, in fact, there's one frequency, Marty, I wanted to talk to you about it, but I have some problems with. So feel free to use it for general information, but don't expect it to be accurate for tactical use. The official plan will be posted on this www.certla.com website shortly. Until that time, this is only an in-process document.
By the way, nobody explained it, but you heard a couple of terms, and let me just say that don't worry about it when you hear VHF, UHF, and HF. All it means is different frequencies and just about how far these things reach. So any questions you have, you can get to me. I can relay them. I hope some of you guys get together and are interested in joining one of these services. And Mark wants the last word.
No, just a quick question. Are these charts for publication to the public with all the frequencies and everything, or are these internal for use by the communication system?
They're not for publication yet. If you go to the CERT website, that's for publication. This is just in-process material, so I hand it out because it's the one I'm working on that's the most accurate. But it's not official unless you get it off the CERT website. And that one, for the CERTCOM, is publishable. The other ones are proprietary.
And if anybody wants to see a couple of those HTs as they're walking out, I've got one of the good ones, which I really like. And I've got the ones that are $35 on Amazon. It's the one I throw in my wife's glove box, so it's there in case of emergencies, because she doesn't allow me to install a radio in her car. And there you go. Somebody was going to try and bring a small setup, but nobody did. Okay. And I'm not going to drive to the roof and put my HF online. So there we go. We got one last question.
Yeah. Donna, what was that website again?
www.cert-la.com. That's the LAFD CERT website.
And by the way, CERT started here.
Yes.
Right here. This is where it started, and it's going. Is it going worldwide yet, or just?
Worldwide.
Huh?
Worldwide.
Worldwide, and it started right here in Los Angeles.
And that website, by the way, is maintained by a volunteer, not by the city.
Yeah. We got one last one.
Yeah, can somebody give us just a little overview as to what's here?
What's
and
that?
What it's manned and so
Oh, okay.
5-minute overview.
Not even
after the meeting, maybe?
Well, no, I'll tell you one. I'll tell everybody one thing. Okay, that's the EOC. Okay, that's the emergency center. Okay, it's part of the city. And I'll tell you about that after. But one of the things that both Jim Featherstone and Chief Nida, LAFD, who's in charge of ACS, and by the way, he does it on a volunteer basis. They don't pay him to do it, and he's going to retire one of these days. Okay, what's next? LAFD, LAPD, and Emergency Management, EMD, are now all organized into the same bureau structure. We've got 5 bureaus throughout the city of 4 bureaus, excuse me. I know they've got 4 bureaus through. Let me get the one. There we go. 4 bureaus throughout the city of Los Angeles. And what they really want to be able to do is be able to communicate from here in some way with each of those bureaus. And they all know that when it does hit the fan, the thing that's going to allow them to communicate is ham radio. Because if my favorite is, if I've got a hot wire that's down across Reseda Boulevard in my neighborhood so that nobody can drive up and down that major street to get in and out, and I want something done about it, I want somebody to be able to get down here from the valley and be able to go over to the table where the DWP is seated and say, we got a problem right at this location, and DWP can take care of it. That's what I want to see happen, and that's what all of this is about, okay? So, hey, thanks for coming. Get back to your neighborhood councils and promote, if you don't have one, and I gotta do it at my own neighborhood council, I hope somebody gets elected, because then they're gonna do it, is an emergency preparedness, or whatever you wanna call it, committee, and then we can start working from there. And when I get the word out asking for, neighborhood council to volunteer 2 people from each neighborhood council, if you guys want to, and I hope you do, talk to whoever the powers that be in your neighborhood council, say, hi, I know it's coming, I want to be one of those volunteers, because I want to be part of the city's plan. Tom?
Yeah, whoever's with the West Hills Neighborhood Council, could you see me, please?
Oh, and by the way, DCS county, you don't have to live in the county territory. Most of the guys I know who are DCS right now, I know most of them who are in the city of Los Angeles. They just happen to work with DCS rather than ACS. But in all probability, within the city of LA, whatever plan we organize, the movement up the ladder is going to be through ACS, and then they will spread it out to where it needs to be. But we've got to be prepared that if you can't get up to ACS from where you happen to be, can you communicate with somebody from DCS in the city next to you that's not Los Angeles? So there we go. Thanks all. Thank you, everybody.